All right, and we're live. Let me. So I call. I'm nicknaming RevolutionConf KevConf because I didn't realize it until this morning that the most popular name for all the speakers and staff and stuff is Kevin. So I think so. It's you, me, Kevin Old, Kevin Jones, and oh crap, I'm missing one. I'm missing one, and I feel bad about it already. And it doesn't matter. So I'm calling it KevConf.
There's a lot of us,
as well as RevConf. So I'm just going to stick with that naming and go with it. So hello, internet, everyone who's watching. We have a handful of viewers, and hopefully that number goes up over the next couple of minutes. We are starting early, but that's okay. Everyone has stuff to do. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin Griffin. I'm one of the co-organizers of RevolutionConf, June 1st and 2nd, 2017, in beautiful Virginia Beach, Virginia. And as part of our initiative to get out and tell you, the attendees, about our speakers, give you a chance to learn more about their backgrounds, where they're coming from, and a little bit about the talks that they're going to give, because it's really hard to make that decision the day of the conference of what talk am I going to go see. And today I am joined by Kevin Zurawel. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing well. Let's see. Your talk, I remember your talk going through the submissions because it's always funny. You just get this crate full of submissions, and for us it was around 350 or so, and you really have to go by title the first wave through. And I remember yours sticking out. I was like, all right, this one has to go in the consideration list because I want to know more about it. Your talk is entitled Intro to NES Assembly. So NES as in Nintendo Entertainment System, right?
That's right. Yep.
Awesome. Well, we will talk more about that in a moment, but I want to know more about you, Kevin. Tell us about yourself. Where you're from, where do you work, and what do you do?
Well, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, but I've been in Chicago for about 4 years now, and here I work for a company called Braintree. We do payment processing. You're probably familiar. Some of our big merchants are Uber and Airbnb. But we also handle, you can be a small mom and pop business and you can sign up with a Braintree account and start taking credit card and Apple Pay and Android Pay payments and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. What's your all stack look like at Braintree?
It's kind of all over the place. There's a lot of Ruby, there's some Java. So I'm a front-end developer at Braintree, and even on the front end, we've got React, we've got Angular, we've got some third-party JavaScript stuff where you really can't use a framework at all, so it's all just plain vanilla JavaScript.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that's cool. Now, I like to ask all of our speakers about their origin story. So we know where you are now, but when did you get the bug for building software and education? What'd you do? How'd you get to where you are?
So I've got kind of like the traditional and the not so traditional kind of aspects to that. So when I was a kid, I was really into video games. When I was a kid, my family got an Apple IIe, and it was supposedly to be, you and your sister can use this to write your homework papers and things like that. But it was really just a lot of games. And you could write BASIC on the Apple IIe, which was really cool. That's kind of how I got kind of my first start. After that, I did it sort of as a hobby. It wasn't really something I pursued. So when I was in college, I was a linguistics major, which had kind of some parallels where you could integrate some computer science stuff, but I didn't really have the traditional kind of computer science background. And after I graduated and realized that the linguistics job market is extremely, extremely small, I was actually working at a college textbook store, which had a lot of downtime, and you have access to an entire shelf of computer science books. So I kind of picked it up again then.
Oh, wow. So linguistics, that is a combination I don't think I've heard before. I've always heard English into computer science. I've heard music into computer science. I've even several occasions like philosophy and liberal arts into computer science, but linguistics, that's really interesting. So you were studying like just how language is formed?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a systematic approach to language. Instead of looking at like individual languages, you're more like how does language as a whole work? And there's actually an entire kind of subfield called computational linguistics, which is where you look at things like natural language processing, that kind of work.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. I was reading or listening to something about the show on Sci-Fi called The Expanse, and they had to build a language, um, and they brought on linguists.
Yeah.
As someone who studies linguistics, and they had to build this entire language from scratch, but it's a language that would actually translates, and I just found it fascinating. I only know like 1.5 languages, so I English good enough, and I took high school German, and that's the extent of my language branching out. But I think that's fascinating. I'd love to hear more about it when you're here for RevolutionConf.
Sure.
Let's jump into your talk. So again, I said your talk's called Intro to NES Assembly, and I think you have one of the more unique talks in our lineup. So if I'm an attendee coming into your talk, what level should I be, and what should I expect to get out of your talk when it's all said and done?
So when I was starting to put together this talk, I think the thing that I want you to be able to walk away with is at least a decent understanding of how the NES actually works, like what happens when you turn it on, and what is this code you're actually writing, and how does it all go together, and give you kind of a platform so that you can go off on your own and learn how to do more with this and experiment with it. So coming in, I mean, I really don't expect you to have any experience at all. I mean, it helps if you understand how programming in any language kind of works, but I don't expect you to come in knowing assembly or anything like that, and I don't expect you to necessarily be a huge NES fan. So I mean, part of my talk is going to be covering what is this box and why does it matter.
So that's so I don't really have a working NES in my home. Are there open source tools, things I can download that help me develop an NES game on modern hardware?
Sure. I mean, emulation is really popular. I think one of the oldest NES emulators actually just celebrated its 20th birthday.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Nesticle, or
Yep,
I'm
that's
trying
the
to
one.
remember what it's called. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, there are tools out there so that you can write your assembly source code, you can run it through an open source assembler, and your output will be a .NES file, and you can feed that into any emulator and run it wherever you want.
Wow. So I have to write assembly.
There are a number of people who have tried to make ways that you don't have to, but I find the assembly approach really interesting because at the time that the system was actually popular, all the games that all the games that you love, they were all written directly by hand in assembly. Like higher level languages are just not really a thing you can use on this computer because it's so underpowered compared to what we have now.
Wow. So I remember the NES, you were really constrained by just memory and processing power. Running in emulators, do the modern emulators keep you to those same constraints? Do you have to worry about memory allocation and all that good stuff?
You really do. Yeah, you do. So there are a few kind of quality of life things that some of the modern emulators will give you. So one of the restrictions that the NES has is sprites, which are like things that are moving graphics on the screen. You can only have 8 sprites on a single horizontal line at any one time. And if you have more than that, it'll draw the first 8, and then everything else will just be invisible. So like if you play a lot of old games where you see flickering on the screen, that's usually them trying to compensate for this 8 things on a line limit. And a lot of modern emulators will have that as a setting where you can turn that off so that it'll show as many as you want, because modern computers can handle that.
So by the flickering, are they trying to like show one line, then on next frame show another line, and then switch back and
Sort of.
forth?
So like, if you've got 10 things on a line, you'll see flickering because a lot of times the code will be written to be like, show the first 8 and hide the other 2, and then like hide the first one, show the middle 8 and hide the last one, and like kind of cycle it around.
Gotcha. So it's just, that wasn't my my crappy TV. It was,
No, it was not your TV.
Actually programmed into the box. Interesting. Okay. Wow. I'm looking really forward to, I'm going to try again to your talk, because this was one of my, we have to pass this one through, because I'm really interested. And I think you're going to have one of the more popular talks, because everyone is interested. So would it be possible if I wrote a full game on an NES? Are there ways of getting cartridges and deploying to a cartridge and giving that out to people?
It is tricky, but yes. So I mean, like when this was actually, a living system that new games are coming out for, Nintendo had the monopoly on cartridge manufacturing. So if you wanted to publish a game, you had to send your code to them, and then they would manufacture the cartridges. Nowadays, there are some places. I don't have any that I can recommend or anything off the top of my head, but
Black market.
There are companies that will sell what are essentially the shell of an NES cartridge, and then inside it has those same pins at the bottom, but there's like a flash chip on it. So you can basically like plug in an SD card or flash something onto the cartridge and then run your games on real hardware.
Oh, wow. It's funny you mentioned the monopoly and that Nintendo had. If I recall correctly, that was the whole seal of quality.
Yep.
So they could say this is a legitimate cartridge, it will work on your system, because they controlled every aspect of production.
Yeah. And I mean, also part of that was, the NES came out not long after the big Atari crash, where the whole video game market was just cratered, and Nintendo wanted really close control over how many games are actually coming out each year, because if there were hundreds, then they were worried the same thing would happen.
Well, excellent. So let's move on. You're in Chicago. Will this be your first time in Virginia?
It is. I'm excited.
Oh, awesome. So are you going to do any touristy stuff? Anything you're looking forward to doing while you're here? You have time for that?
Outside of the beach, I don't really know what touristy stuff you have, so I'm kind of excited to see it all.
Awesome. So you can get together with, we have really a group of people. This will be their first time in Virginia Beach, and we'll recommend stuff. Our RevolutionConf Slack is full of locals, and we tell everyone, don't go to chain places for food. There's plenty of local joints to go enjoy. If you're into seafood, there's a ton of seafood. If you're into other stuff, there's a lot of local joints. As for stuff to do, I think I mentioned a couple times before to other speakers, we have a state park directly across the street from the hotel. So if you get tired of the beach, you can go over and do some nature trails. We're not that far away from our area's aquarium, and they have a ropes course back there that you can do as well. There's a marsh, and you can zip line across the marsh, which it's not the longest zip line or anything, but it's really cool to zip line across the water, especially during high tide.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And and then there's just tourist traps all over the place. We'll try to guide people away from that stuff. But the best part about our beach is it's not in the touristy part of Virginia Beach, the oceanfront or the boardwalk, as we call it. We're north of that, and it's all a residential area, and they dropped our hotel in the middle. So you go out onto our beach in the middle of June, it's just residents or people in the area. There's no tourists at our part of the beach, so it should be a much better experience for you. Are you interested in something like surfing?
I don't know if I'm like coordinated enough to really do that, but sure.
we we've mentioned before, we talked about offering surfing lessons to speakers and attendees
That'd be cool.
as a come a day early and do this thing. I don't think that's working out, but you know, for next year we could always do that. It'd be a lot of fun. Well, you conference goer, conference veteran. One thing I'd like to ask all of our speakers is, if someone's coming to RevolutionConf and it's their first event or first big event, what's some advice you would give to that person?
I guess kind of the one thing I wish I had known earlier would be that, you know, if you're going to submit a talk to a conference, you don't submit that talk unless that is a thing you really want to talk to other people about. So, you know, if you're afraid to talk to a speaker because you're like, oh, my question is stupid, or, you know, they're not going to want to talk to me. No, they really want to talk to you about whatever their talk was about and more, but that's always a great way to start talking to someone.
Excellent. Yeah, that's been a reoccurring theme with every speaker, has been, you know, talk to us, talk to other people. And, you know, that's why we have social events. So we want to build an environment where it's safe and conducive for everyone to talk to anyone. And so I'm right there with you. And I think after you're done talking, you're going to have a crowd around you. We'll have to kick you out of the room because but there are plenty of places where you could just go off and talk about this stuff as much as you want to. That's
great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, all right, excellent. So is there anything you like to promote? A shameless self-promotion? Perfect time for it.
I don't really have anything to announce right now. I'm in kind of the very early stages of working on something related to this talk, but I'll have more info as it comes out. Probably the best place to keep in touch is with my Twitter feed.
Okay.
On Twitter, I'm at KZURAWEL. And yeah, I don't have open DMs, but I'm more than happy to talk to people there.
Fantastic. So you already answered my next question. Where could people find you on the internet? So excellent. Well, everyone, that's Kevin Zurawel. He will be speaking on Intro to NES Assembly at RevolutionConf 2017, June 1st and 2nd in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Tickets are still on sale. You can go to revolutionconf.com to grab your ticket, look at Kevin's talk and all of our other amazing speakers. Kevin, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me. I think it's going to be great.
All right. I'll see you in June.
See you then.